Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a good lunch, and I try not to make this as boring as a machine, and try to explain to you what really AI is. I've been thinking about this topic and how I should be presenting it. First of all, the topic is how to integrate AI into organization. But the first question to ask, shouldn't it be, what is AI? It's a very controversial topic, so I try not to go into too much of it. Let me see. Yeah. So the sense of AI, or the meaning of AI, if you put away all those hypes and controversial discussions of it will replace humans and all these things, that answer I cannot give it to you, although I don't believe it will. We first always have to look into how can these tools or technology can actually help us. Just the same as how human began our intelligence tens of thousands of years ago to be starting to build tools to assist us in doing things better. As a matter of fact, the terminology of computer was actually a job title back 100 years ago. Human builds different machines to help us do better. From steam engine to a computer where it can process a little bit more intelligent, to today, all the tools, our cell phones, our smart home, all these things are starting to help us slightly more intelligent than the tool before. So when we first research, when we first look into this technology, I operate a firm of close to 100 engineers and researchers. We started with a lot of different topics. We were just merely researchers trying to find out, wow, what can we do with this? Slightly 0.1% more accuracy. It does not mean anything to normal people, to normal company. Then we switch our focus. We switch to how can we actually bring this technology out from the lab into organizations. We started to find out what is the problem of today's world. And we found that it's actually very simple. In today's world, when technology evolves, when we adopted more tools to use, we created more problems as well. In the last 20, 30 years, the adoption of softwares into our lives, whether in the corporate lives or in our personal lives, is basically taken over our daily movements. And the introduction of softwares created another new level of problems, which is we are starting to process a lot more digital information. And the problem of this digital information is now we have to look into so many different screens, your mobile phones. I mean, how many of you has more than one mobile phone? I'm sure some of you do have more than one mobile phones. There you go. You have two phones, okay. So the masses of information has basically driven us into another age of how can we actually control this information? Because, and the answer is very simple. The sources of the problem is simply this information are still in unstructured format, which means this information, whether it's in a digital format or in a writing format, it requires human being to read and reason it. And that is the biggest problem. And more than 80% of our time, according to statistics, are wasted. Maybe I shouldn't say wasted, but are being spent on processing this digital information. That's the source of the problem. And the other 20% is basically you use the 80% of the time to input this information into softwares like your mobile phone, your computers, to make it work. So we try to narrow down on the use cases. What can we actually do? We realize that the process automation, robotic process automation, is simply reducing the time and resources spent in each process. The input of information are still in a very old way, which means it still requires human to input of information to read something from a document. For example, doctors have to read patient's record from a screen, even though it's not from the paper, but it's no different. Reading from screen and paper has no difference at all, then only to process something. A bank salesperson to approve your mortgage process will have to get your original bank statement, your pay slip, your identity document to actually look at it and compare very simple information like your pay slip. The net salary amount is actually equal to the actual incoming amount into your bank statement in the last 6 months. It's such a simple process. You need to actually look at 5, 6 different documents at the same time. So, the cost of business is very high. It's actually rather spending so much money and resources spending on processing these, so we call it unstructured data, information, document. And there are many different types of documents. There are scanned documents, writing documents, processing digital documents, and it requires a lot of human to actually reason it, understand it, and the other problem is the nature of work has never stopped evolving. People, the demand of consumer is increasing all the time. That's why we still require human to do something rather than letting a process or a manufacturing plant to just produce the thing. So because of these two factors, it requires a new way of solving the problem, a slightly more intelligent way, which is using artificial intelligence to read all these type of unstructured documents. I cannot show the color, but basically those highlighted information you see, that is basically a combination of machine learning, or in our words, we call it natural language processing and deep learning, to basically understand what is this document, extract it, label it, reason it, and make the automation out of it. For example, the structured data of paid in a bank statement equals to the net salary amount. That is to verify that you are actually providing the real information. So to put it into the context, a simple mortgage process, as you all know, may take several weeks to months. Why? It's actually nothing. This mortgage process, what is a mortgage process? It's basically a preset rules in a very already highly regulated industry and still involving a lot more humans to check your eligibility. It's a very simple question. Why is it still taking weeks and months to process it? If we can extract this data out at a very fast time, theoretically, we should be able to get a result within few minutes, few hours maximum. Why should we be waiting? Why should we be waiting to queue? Why can't I just walk into a Starbucks and the Starbucks knows that I'm actually coming in, prepare the coffee that I like for me? So in a sense, what AI can do is, in my word of explanation, is the ability to extract data, whether it's from text, graphics, or voice, from a real-time situation at a fast speed and able to process the next action for you. The next action is the benefit that we are seeking for. A little bit of differentiation, explanation, what is it really difference between all you have heard about process automation and AI. In a way, process automation, like I explained just now, if you look at the above, is trying to improve the time and resources required in each process. It is providing real benefit, can save probably 70, 80% of the time. And when you think about it, when you have 10 processes, and you try to save time in each process, but there's still human involved in it, the real time, the real accumulated time savings is actually not as great as what you initially thought, because that's still the existing way of doing things. If you can extract the data out, that's the only way to re-engineer the whole process, because in the process, again, I use mortgage application as an example, you already process all those information out. If this, then that, you already have the data exactly, accurately extracted out. You can put those automation easily. The number of checks on your documents, the number of checks on your background, KYC process, theoretically, it can be done within seconds, because a machine can produce one document within seconds. It can produce 1,000 documents within seconds. You are able to get all these benefits out at a faster speed, at a much higher accuracy, because you do not involve human error into the factor anymore. So that is basically our process of trying to create a higher accuracy model within a shorter time and to achieve the objective in a better way. Now, there's another thing that when I put it there, AI models can actually learn and predict. How do we learn? There are two things. One is how do we train, and then how do we make it learn, an AI model. How do we train is basically we have to use the historical data to train on how human being has been behaving before to determine how we can actually move it forward. So how do we train them? Just think of like a 2-year-old kid. You're trying to teach a 2-year-old kid to walk from here to there. What you teach them is you do not teach the kid to walk every single step, 30 degrees, 40 degrees. You do not do that. But in a robot, a traditional robot, you have to program exactly the right way to walk. And it will not change. But in a kid, 2-year-old kid, you simply teach him how to walk, and he will walk from here to there without any problem. Now, there's a restriction here. Does that mean that the kid can automatically do other things? The answer is no, which means we have to retrain every time for different purpose. Like, you train a 2-year-old kid on walking. You have to train again him on how to eat, how to use a spoon. You have to train him again on how to basically go to toilet. You have to train for different things. But on all these possibilities of reaching an objective, we human beings don't like to do it. Why should I be programming every single possibility of walking from here? There are millions of possibilities, probabilities. So this is the part of the intelligence that we train a machine to understand the objective, and the machine itself can figure out how to walk from here to there without the need to actually manhandle them. Now, how to actually let it learn continuously is then we will continuously feeding them with new data because, for example, again, like a kid, the kid may not know how to avoid an obstacles because you tell him an objective, but maybe there are a lot of obstacles. He may first start to hit something. Do you think that your word of telling them, don't hit that, would actually let them listen? No. He learned by himself. He learned by himself after hitting something. Fell down, he hurt, he will know it next time. And same with the machine as well. We're trying to let the machine learn to avoid all these obstacles because we're only giving one objective, is to reach the destination. Regardless of how you reach the destinations, that is your job to figure out yourself. Of course, I'll put in some rules as well. For example, in an autonomous car driving, I'll put in certain rules that you have to avoid things, but especially to care more about humans. If you have an option, a choice to hit a human or a car, you hit the car rather than a human. These are those additional rules that we can put in to train the kid better. So, I don't have a lot of time. Let me just give you one real case studies that I have been working on. It's a bank, and it's mortgage application. There are a lot of unstructured data in a bank because bank process a lot of information, data. 80% of them are actually in unstructured format. This is a real life data given by the bank. It's a global bank that has a presence in more than 70 over countries. I need to check a lot of information. Affordability, can you afford to pay back? What is your spending behavior? What is your credit history? What's your personal information? There are more than 200 of data checks. And it has to go through different departments. First, from the sales team to go through your documents, pass it on to the underwriter team to check, pass it to the compliance team to check again, and then pass it to the accounts payables team to release the payment. Every department needs to recheck and check again. That is just the same way every bank is processing today. Now comes the problem. Number one, it takes a long time. Number two, expensive, involves so many different people. Number three, it's very low accuracy because human beings hate to check this simple information. If I ask you to copy a Bible, you will be hate to write Bible as well, although you do love Bible, I believe. And the other more important thing is actually why should I allow my personal information to be seen by different people in different departments? They are still human beings. They can also expose your information. Why should your passport copy be visible to many different people in a bank? They are also human beings. It's data privacy. So, this is a simple process of a mortgage application. And the underwriting department, compliance department, and sales quality departments are the one that is actually delaying, slowing down the process, taking months. The salesperson would want to close a sales, which means a mortgage approval, within as fast as he could, because he takes commissions on a sales approved. So why should he be waiting? Not only the client hates to wait, but the salesperson hates to wait as well. A salesperson may process 5 applications a day, 25 applications a week, and then 1 week later, suddenly the underwriting department comes back and says that, oh, Danny, do you remember somebody applied for this mortgage last week, but he sent the wrong month of bank statement. Please call him and get it back. Is it easy? It is very difficult. That is the reason why it's taking so long. Now, how can we actually automate it? We basically replace the human review, uploading of information, turning into structured data, again, review again, data entry, approval to automated, which reduced the time from more than 30 processing hours, which span across 4 or 5 weeks, to less than an hour. That has already been implemented in a real bank. The investment of the bank has already generated, as of now, more than 10x of ROI. That is excluding any human cost, because they are not firing anyone. They're rehiring more experts to take care of this system, but able to reach out to more clients. And before that, this, for 100% of cases checked, this is on a compliance team. There's no single compliance officer in this world can go through 100% of the check, because it is dumb. Why do you need to build a process and then check 100% of the process again and then check 100% of the process again? It's simply not working. So the usually compliance only check maximum 5 to 10%. It's as in like audit. You never check 100% of the audit. Machines can do 100% because it's no difference to them. They can check because the rules have already been pre-populated. It's a highly regulated industry. Everybody should know what they should be doing. There's no outlier at all. Very clear. So going back to the main topic a little bit is, of course, this is slightly similar to RP industry as well, where we look into very highly repetitive industry process work. We try to automate it from that sense. This is the benefits of the bank, that now it allows the salespeople to do more sales, simply not to do more sales, by giving them the better tools. So what happens is they have now a screen in front of them. They submit, they scan all the documents, bank statement, pay slip, proof of address, and immediately they will know that what data check is approved and what is not approved, and why. If not approved means that maybe you are required to submit 6 consecutive months of bank statement, but maybe you submit 1 wrong month. Machines can tell that immediately. It provides the tool to the salesperson to know exactly what can be approved, what cannot. It provides the manager to basically control the stuff in a much easier way, because you are not letting them run on the cloud, on a large anymore. They cannot simply do anything they like. You have a better control on the stuff. And the idea in compliance team is just loving it, because you are now concentrating the data together. You have a better control in designing a new process. I'm not going into details. This is very technical in terms of how we actually build an AI model. It basically is and implement it into a real operation process. It is basically involving not only the technical personnel, the AI scientists, but also involve the domain expert, which is you, and those people who are doing the job. So the same thing of problem identification, data preparation, model building, training, and integrating. I will not go through in detail. And again, this is a bit of a framework that, from our experience, how should an organization they carry out their plan in deploying this digital transformation. Because the process is slightly different, because by deploying AI models, you are basically changing a lot of behaviors or the way how you operate the business. For example, again, back to Starbucks. Before that, you are waiting for a client to come and make the payment, then only you prepare the coffee. Now, you should be predicting somebody is coming, and then you make the coffee right at the time. So the process is changed, and that requires a bit of reorganization, retraining of talents, and to understand exactly what we like to do. So it always involves of pilot, implementation, and production, and ongoing continuous improvement. That is also the part where the AI models can continuously training and upgrading itself with the assistance of the AI scientists. My last slide, I hope I'm not exceeding the time. My last slide is basically, this is probably more geared towards the startups and how organizations, smaller players, would like to be in this, would like to roll out this AI strategy. I mean, you hear all those big companies like Google, Apple, Amazon have huge infrastructure, paying huge money to these AI scientists. They're easily millions of dollars. Oracle's new chief AI scientist is paid $7 million. OpenAI is easily about, their average salary is about 1.5 to 2.5 mil. This is just the demand and supply, and the big guys are taking the data. Google is taking all the data. IBM is taking the data. So do we have a chance to compete with them? The answer is yes. Yes, there's always a chance. You look into the evolution of these companies from the early days of AT&T in the States, and then you have IBM, and then GE, AT&T, IBM, and then you suddenly Apple, and then you go to Microsoft, and then Google, then back to Apple again, and now seems that Microsoft is starting to catch up again. The evolution of corporate, and also new corporates, new startups, the opportunities are always there. And how to do it, there's always a strategy. So if you ask me, what's the difference between a Google AI models and your model? The answer is very simple. We can do it in a higher accuracy than Google's AI models, but we can only do it in a very specific industry. Imagine Google is trying to cater for everything. Is it possible? It's not possible, but they can cater for more use cases. So the engine can basically, reach out to a lot more use cases. Just take off your Google Translation, for example. Is it accurate? Is your Google Maps 100% accurate? Is your Google Voice 100% accurate? The answer is no, simply because it has to cater for all the possibilities, which is not possible. But of course, they are good because they can still try to increase the general standards, the minimum standard of the quality, and provides technical people like us to look into more specifically, and then refine it to put into specific use cases and information, domain specific. And the answer, again, is very simple. No single engineers or scientists will know how to solve the problem unless the problem is clearly stated out by the domain expert. We have a new term we call it human in the loop. That means even an AI model cannot achieve 100% accuracy. What about the error rate? Can you allow an autonomous car to actually hit somebody with 0.01% of error rate to hit and kill somebody? You cannot allow that. You need a machine to run in a very efficient way or create a process that can handle the error. That's what, in the industry, there's a new term in the last few months. We call it human in the loop, but somebody like us would like to call it expert in the loop, because these are experts like yourself who understand your problem in a much clearer way, because you are the one who runs your business, your operation, your work every day. You're the one who knows where to pinpoint. And if we can go into more domain specific to drill down into the specific problem of the process, we can do it better. 100% guarantee. The second one, centralized cloud. It's slightly different. Everybody has been talking about going on the cloud in the last 20 years. But the idea is changing. Cloud requires infrastructure, requires speed in order to create an action. So if, imagine, let me give one example. If all the models are processed on the cloud, and it takes cloud certain time to reach to each other and to respond. Under circumstances like autonomous car driving, you cannot respond on time. Or the other example, let's say theft detection. Can you actually wait for the model to check different angles, the image recognition from different angles of camera to decide whether am I really stealing things, or am I just reaching my hand into my wife's pocket to take a phone or money? Maybe I am really stealing from my wife. But the idea of the last 2-3 years is we're trying to decentralize the storage system because we need to process it faster, a lot faster. And we need a lot more powerful local GPU to run the model, to run this processing a lot more faster before we disintegrate certain information to share with others and to retrain it. So that's a bit technical, but a lot more companies are building their own cloud system within their premise. Infrastructure, again, is similar as well. Google, Amazon may have very big infrastructure. How about the small players? The small players is you now have this camera that can process AI models on the spot and can give you faster response for you to do something. I give you this example of theft detection. It's a startup that I mentored from Ecole Polytechnique in Paris. It's a group of 3 PhD geniuses that created certain AI models to detect theft actions. And they secured several contracts from Carrefours and large retailers in Paris. And the problem was, the reason why I was brought in as an advisor was they got the contract. The idea was brilliant, but they don't know how to begin to build, to train the model, because where can they find the model? And where did they put the model? Put it in a business term, who knows, who has a clear definition of a theft behavior? No one has. Where to find a video that clearly defines somebody steals something at that point of time? Nobody has the data. How to begin? The idea is basically to disintegrate, to basically work with the expert, who is the security guard. He's the one that knows more. And work with him to put out a lot of hypothesis behavior, hundreds of them. And we built hundreds of models. And we use filtration method to filter normal security CCTV data to catch the action. And use his expertise to basically decide that, okay, this is correct. This is not correct, we filter. It's a process of building the model. And in the actual implementation, we actually built it not on the cloud, but on the premise, on the system, to allow, we do not remove the security engineer because he's an expert. We basically allow him to, instead of looking at 6 screens at a time, 7 days a week, which he don't really catch a theft. His success rate was basically less than 5%. But he is an expert. He's been on the job for more than 30, 40 years. So right now, he doesn't look into screens anymore. He's just sitting there watching, doing other things, waiting for the TV to silence, to say that there is a probability of theft behavior is currently happening. But we are not 100% sure. What he does is he rewind 5 seconds earlier to take a look, use his expertise to decide, is this suspicious? If it is, go out and check again and again and again. This is how we retrain the model on the spot and also use the expertise to combine together to make the process seamless. All-in-one AI engine, again, Google, Amazon is trying to do one for all. The voice, the translation, Google Maps. We try to do it in a modular plug and play, a lot of startups are actually starting to do it this way, to allow you to focus into very specific issues, industry, allow you to actually build the model that works now. Remember, corporations or you you do not have the time like us to wait for the model to be trained. You do not want to bring up my son or somebody else's son. You want somebody or something that is ready to deploy to be used. That is a commercial contract. No one can actually wait for you to train from a 60% accuracy to a 90% accuracy. No one can actually give you the data to train to this high. So that goes to my last point, big data to less data. We used to say that, AI model requires a lot of data to build, to train. Again, our approach is different, and this is more trendy in the last 1 year or so, is we look into what we're trying to achieve, and then we can create synthetic data. But the most important thing is, again, this is more of a methodology, that we only require a few hundred data to build the model, and we do not require the client to give us the data, because how can a bank give us their client's data? As no bank can allow us, or public governments, they cannot allow us access to any data. So these are some very practical commercial restrictions that prevent the technologies to actually work with commercial companies. So less data is basically the trend, is rather than you look into every single data, you try to look into the data that you really need to use by using the expert to understand what data you need to use and put it into an action. So I am not going too far detail into the technical, but that's basically some advices of how startups and corporate can start to look into this problem. And the objective, the conclusion is only one, is it is definitely doable for corporate to have a strategy to deploy this technology. It's not a myth, it's not, nowhere to start. It's very doable to plan, to strategize, and to deploy this technology. I know my time is up, so open to the floor if you have any question. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, before their questions, my question. So it's projected that AI will, by roughly 2035, will double the global growth rate. At the same time, there's a recent study by KPMG that says that about 17% of large companies use AI in their processes. And their estimation is by 2022, 2023, 50% of them will use that. So the question will use AI. So it's quite obvious that AI is going up. But if I'm a medium or large company in a country like Romania, my first thought most likely is, yeah, but this is expensive. Can you afford not to invest in AI in your company? What's your take?
I think 2 points. Number one is, I believe either the company is big or small, you cannot afford not to look into this automation anymore, because the ROI, you're not talking about years. You're talking about months of ROI, and you're talking about 10 double digits of ROI return. And number two is, don't think of AI as a very expensive, because Romania has so many technical talents. I met so many good AI researchers in Cluj, and it is possible to actually build a strategy on in-house AI team to actually start looking into this, to put it that way. Yeah.
A bit of light in the room and some questions. We have one question there, if you can give a hand. There's a mic coming towards you. Thank you. If you can also say your name and where you're from. Yeah, but.
Hello, Danny.
Hello.
Please tell me if you know what is the most accurate and the fastest period to approve a loan in the world now?
Oh, I do not know the answer actually. To approve a loan, currently there are several startups. I forgot the name of the startup. I think it's something Rock. They're being invested more than $500 million. They approve a loan in under 3 minutes. And they are backed by sovereign funds, like Singapore sovereign funds, Kazakhstan sovereign funds. And their rate is basically 3 minutes, they would be able to approve the loan, provided that all the documents are in place. Yeah.
Yes, I'm now Alipay business division. Approve a loan in 3 minutes.
This company is actually in London. A London startup, quite large, something rocks or something. But of course, you know, when you talk about the way to do it, there are two things, right? One is regulators' approval. If the regulators allow you to do things differently, of course you can approve anything you like. The second way is technology. How to use technology to meet with existing regulations compliance and hence able to increase the speed to make use of it. So to answer in a more I work a lot with regulators, with governments, and the governments in a lot of the world, a lot of the parts of the world are willing to take a look of these and work with the enterprise to see that is there any rules that they should be changing to meet with this new process and approve their new way of doing things. And that's the reason why, you know, London startup like Revolut, Curve, Need Bank, all these banks, the way how they approve a bank account opening is 5 minutes, but they are not a real bank, although they have an FCA license, but they are not a real bank. They still have to park their money into another bank's bank account. But recently, the regulations just approved them. So in a simple word, they were not able to do a direct debit in the UK, those online banking, but it was approved like 2 weeks ago.
Hello, my name is Esther.
Hello.
I wanted to ask you, you talked about GDPR, and what I am curious about is what happens when you start with data scraping, and you scrape different websites, communities, and such.
Yeah.
If you do it manually, let's say with a SERP API or something, you might be open to GDPR issues. Is by automating it, you said that you could get rid of the human eye. Is it better to do data scraping using AI?
Interesting question. I was talking to a few GDPR regulators, EU, just last week. The current way of GDPR is only quite restricted to two things. One is the structured data, scrapping of data, like you mentioned. The second thing is basically corporations' data that contains personal information of you. So that is still in very unstructured format, like your passport copy in a bank statement. These are not under scrapping issues. So the scrapping issues are like your Facebook account, LinkedIn account information. These are not really under restrictions of GDPR to do something. The current rules is if you breach the rules, if you leak the data, you are under obligation to report to all the relevant parties, including the regulators, internal parties, the parties that data is being breached within 72 hours. But there's no further actions to how to prevent it back. So the way we're trying to do is by digitizing the data within the corporate, we are able to control the data. Where has it been through? Where has it been used? Therefore, we are able to control those data's roadmap, or where they are, what have they been done to. So that was the idea which we are currently discussing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.